My name's Andrew. I'm, as you can read there, head of the technical department at Nexus. I need to give you a little bit of background, I guess, in the context of who I am and what I'm going to be talking to you about today. So Nexus is an IT provider that we're based in the Southwest. We've got about 50 employees, the majority of which are IT staff or IT engineers or technically trained. We work with a range of organisations. Now that can be large organisations we've worked with, might be someone like the Met Office. We work with the Welsh Government, local, regional councils, all the way down to smaller organisations of 10 employees upwards. We sell a range of products. We sell managed services or IT support. So if someone gets something broken on their machines, they contact us and we'll help fix it. We'll work with them to produce a roadmap for their IT. We also do a lot of professional services. So what that means is working with internal IT departments to help them deploy solutions or help them do things that they need fixed. They might not have the time or capability to do it themselves. So my role is looking after the service delivery team and the project team. Now I've got a little bit of an objective here today. So I sit on the operational side. I'm not commercial, nor am I somebody who really enjoys standing up and talking to a group of people like yourselves in this kind of format. I get quite nervous about it, so bear with me. But I do it because I think it's a really good opportunity for me to talk to interested business leaders, stakeholders about the risks that their organisation face around cybersecurity. For me, we'll talk about it, but I've been on the sharp end of what happens when an organisation contacts us because an awful thing has happened to them, and we've got to help them resolve it or help them with that kind of issue. And I think it's very easy for some people to look on the news and look at Jaguar Land Rover, Marks and Spencers, and think they're massive organisations. We're not a target. They're people who are going to be affected. We aren't. And if you feel like that, then politely, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. We've seen organisations come to us of all different local organisations, different shapes and sizes, who have been attacked by criminals, and we are now in an awful lot of trouble. So I genuinely think that organisations need to take this stuff seriously. That's my objective. So what am I talking about? Well, if I move over here, you can probably see what I'm going to be talking about. Really, the important thing, I think, is what can be done. I wanted to leave you all with a set of takeaways that you can think about and go to your IT team or whatever that you can go and make improvements with. We've got a lot to go through, so I am going to rattle through a lot of it, so apologies for that. And, ask questions at the end or come and speak to us in the exhibiting hall afterwards. So basically, I think it's important to talk about IT or cybersecurity and how it started. Now, IT, cybercrime, cyber attacks started about 30 years ago. What happened is a lot of machines 30 years ago was using something called Windows 3.1, Windows 3.11. That's an old school way that's an old school thing. And all of a sudden, people started getting these modems and plugging it into the back of their machines, allowing them access to the internet. Now, when that happened, it completely took Bill Gates by surprise. Microsoft, Windows were not ready for it. And at that time, you had internet geeks. They were hassling their friends. It was a bit of mischief where they would log on to friends' machines and see, they would access the files on it, or they'd cause little dialog boxes to appear on their machines. But it wasn't malicious, it was mischief. Things then evolved where you had criminals trying to extort money out of people because they would be trying to get them to purchase cards, gift vouchers, and trying to get them to send the details. Now that's malicious, but it was quite low level typically in terms of the kind of the value and the impact to the organisation. Then cryptocurrency came along and the world changed. Now this is responsible for the modern pressures that we experience today. Cryptocurrency gave criminals the ability to extort vast amounts of untraceable money from organisations. That's what's happened. And the pressure that these criminals face to extort money from you and other organisations is absolutely tremendous. It's huge. They are under a huge amount of pressure to do that. And if you have money as an organisation, which you all will, then you are a target. They don't care who you are. If you've got money, then you are a target. You have the ability to be extorted. That's what it boils down to. So, cybercrime, what is it? It's an industry. That's the best way to describe it. And in terms of what it means, it's a $10.5 trillion industry. That's how much, last year it was 10 trillion. Now it's 10.5. To put that into perspective, there's only 2 countries in the entire world with a GDP higher than that. And that's the US and that's China. So it's making an awful lot of money. What's it made up of? It's made up of individual hackers, it's made up of organised crime, and it's made up of rogue states. Now, this organised crime, I can talk about them. They are businesses, it's organised crime, but they're organisations that work as businesses in their own right. They have customer service departments, they've got operational teams. They use paid-for software, which is designed specifically to extort money out of you guys. They have people come into their office, with a briefcase, wearing suits and stuff, and they've got dashboards on their screens that say how much money they've extorted this month, how they're doing against target. That genuinely happens. There's a joke that, well, I go to quite a few conferences, and they always say that the best customer services departments are these organised crime organisations, because they will help you pay them money. They'll work through it. And like every other industry, they're using AI. Now, we all know that AI is a tool. Hopefully we all do. It's a tool. But when you can combine AI with cybercrime, it produces that. We're getting so much more of, so many more sophisticated attacks, and it's occurring, like it says, at an unprecedented scale. Now, you're probably not going to see it because I'll be in the way, but I'll move over here. There's a report commissioned by Black Kite, and in Black Kite, a cybersecurity firm in the US. And they said, let me read it here, that there's a 123% increase in ransomware attacks over the last 2 years. And it goes on to write about that. Now, if you think about it, AI-driven ransomware. Black Kite are calling out AI as a driver for all this terrible attacks that's going on. Ransomware, if you don't know, ransomware is the business-ending type of attack that organisations face, and it's awful. It's just horrendous. Now, I'm going to show you this. If you go to a website, Ransomware Live, which hopefully will load up straight away. Hey, this is a website I went to a conference in Florida. It was a cybersecurity conference, and one of the analysts there was talking to me about this and displaying it. This scrapes up data from the dark web and talks about who has been affected by cybercriminals. If you go to this website in a couple of hours' time, it will be updated with more organisations. I was looking at it earlier. I'm not going to do it now, but you can scroll down and find a UK firm. If you click on it, it blurs all the images out, but this is genuine, by the way. You can look at it. There's pictures of all their employees. It's all blurred out, but it highlights the fact that employee information is available on the dark web now, because it's scraped it out and it's showing you. You can click up there and it will talk you through the negotiations that the cybercriminals have with their victims, where the how much they're charging initially and how much they settle on. It's all there. And the cybercriminals, the organisations, publish this because they want to show people that they're good at doing business, that they're successful. And if we attack you, we will unencrypt your data. That's it's part of a marketing campaign, believe it or not. Have a look at it later on. No cybercrime. No cyber talk like this would be appropriate. We need to talk about the dark web. Now, I'll let you read what kind of products that people offer if I get out of the way. In the dark web, there are criminals. I was going to say engineers, but there's criminals with a whole range of products that they sell their customers. You've got Vladimir, who's a very experienced engineer, and you've got George, who's more entry level. Look at them products and look how much it costs for them to do something. It's awful, and they can destroy a business or ruin people's lives for tiny amounts of money, really. And that's there, and that's available right now. And people are there's organisations are using people with that kind of expertise to attack your business. Now, what we've seen right now, so I went through Nexus. So like I say, we have a service desk. Well, we're a lot of things, but it includes a service desk. Within that is the kind of incidents that we've seen over the last 12 months. I've split it into 2 sections, 26 minor incidents and 2 major incidents. Really, they're all major incidents. I've called it into 2 because I had to do it somehow, and my major ones are ransomware. The 26th, that might comprise of a user having their account hacked, someone logged in and got access to their data. Now, when someone does that, they'll have access to their emails, their information that they've got available on SharePoint. they've also got access to the global address list, which is, if you go to Outlook and look at your address list, it will probably contain all your customers' email addresses. It will contain all your internal email addresses. That's an incident that needs to be reported to the ICO now. And that's what I class as a mine incident. It can also include things like LinkedIn. If you've got, we worked with a marketing company and their LinkedIn profile was hacked. It doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world, but for them it was, because it was a core part of their business. The two major ransomware ones, they were business-ending events. I'll talk a little bit about them. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. Grab me afterwards if you want some stories. But then, again, this is what we've seen in the last 12 months. You can go back further than that, and we've been contacted by schools out the blue, by other organisations out the blue. And all I'd say is it is horrendously stressful for the client. It's horrendously stressful for our Nexus engineers, for myself, people like that. It's a horrendous thing, and it happens all the time, and it happens to local organisations. And as a brief thing of what actually happens, one of these customers, we provided them with a backup service. They asked us, they paid us to connect up to their machines and monitor their backups. If they failed, and that occasionally happens, if a backup failed, we'd get a notification, go in and fix it. One day, we got a notification that a backup failed, and our engineer went in, and that's what he was presented with. He called me at 6 o'clock in the morning to say, look, this is what's happening. What do we do? So we've got a plan, but that involved contacting the customer and dealing with it. It was a local organisation. This is, again, reinforcing my point. I know I'm using a hammer to crack a walnut or whatever, but this came from a managing director who I was talking to for years and explaining to him, or trying to explain to him, you need to upgrade your firewalls. You need to invest in better security systems. I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm giving you the advice that as a business, this is what you need to do. And that managing director turned around and said, no, I don't want to do it. I don't see the risk. We're not a target. And there was nothing that I could say to him, or my colleagues could say to him. I'm operational, I'm not commercial. But there's nothing that me or our account manager could say to him that would make him change his mind. A couple of months later, this is what he ended up saying, because they were hit by a ransomware attack. There's an annual audit, or an annual survey actually, which is published by the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology. And it says that approximately 612,000 UK businesses and 57,000 charities experienced a cyber breach or attack in the past 12 months, with phishing accounting for 85% of incidents. Cyber Essentials certification, this rose from 3 to 5% of businesses, and board level responsibility for cyber security increased to 31%, which is actually reversing a downward trend. So what this tells me is that there's an awful lot of UK organisations being affected, and yet no one's really taken it seriously. Some are, 5% are, but people need to be working towards these certifications. It is genuinely important. And that was published on the 30th of April, so a couple of weeks ago, really. So anyway, this is the important bit, takeaways. I wanted to, a lot of you may not be IT-based, you may not be, but what should you be doing? First of all, review your security posture. This means speak to whoever looks after your IT right now and ask them questions. Ask them what they would recommend. What have you got in place? Do things need to change? What have you got at the moment? Do you have MFA? If you try and log in to your account and you're not prompted for something on your phone, then, are you really protected? If it's just a username and password, that's not secure enough anymore. It hasn't been for years. If you went to France tomorrow on holiday or wherever, would you be able to log in without telling your IT department? Hopefully not. I can't. There's policies called conditional access, which basically means that unless you hit certain criteria, you can't access your environment. At Nexus, we say, right, if you're in the UK, then this is one of the layers. If you're in the UK, you can connect up. But if you go abroad, and non-UK IP connection attempt, it'll be rejected. If I go on holiday, one of my colleagues goes on holiday, we have to update it and change it. If I try to go home and log in with my personal, my home PC or my daughter's PC or whatever, it won't let me connect because I'm not trying to connect on a Nexus machine. Now, this is actually basic stuff that you should be doing and you should be protected against. I'm not going to ask actually, but there's antivirus. When I started at Nexus 8 years ago, we sold antivirus to everybody, and quite rightly so. Now we're selling antivirus and also another product called EDR, because that's the kind of the minimum baseline that customers should be using, in my opinion. And actually, I think in a lot of IT professionals' opinion. Antivirus is great because it looks for known bits of bad software. If you download a software and install it, and it's known to be bad, it will stop it from working and lock it down and do everything, which is great. What you need to remember is that hackers are jumping onto your machines using exactly the same type of software, exactly the same bits of software that we use at Nexus. If one of you phoned up one of my team tomorrow saying, oh, I've got a funny dialog box, it's not working, something's broken, we'll jump on your machine. That's what you pay us to do. They use exactly the same type of stuff. What EDR does, which is endpoint detection and response, is it looks for patterns of behavior. If all of a sudden you log in from a location you haven't really logged into before, that's one thing it will look for. If you then elevate your permissions on your account to an administrator, that's another thing. It looks for all this information, looks for bad trends and patterns, and it can do something about it. It's not about viruses or bad software, it's about patterns of behavior. And that's what all of you should be having on your systems right now if you haven't already. There's a lot we could talk about here, but look at maintenance schedules. People know that servers need to be patched. Sorry, you know your PCs need to be patched, servers need to be patched as well. A massive reason why WannaCry, which affected the NHS about, was it 12 years ago? A big reason that affected the NHS rather than everybody else, well, it affected others, but them, is because they weren't patching their servers. If they had patched, there was a Microsoft release that came out a couple of months before, which if it was on those servers, they would not have been affected in the way that they were. But who's patching your servers? How often are they doing it? And how do you know it's actually successful? These are questions to ask of your IT department. If you use firewalls, which you probably all do, how do you know your firewall is being patched? We recommend Sonic Walls where we are, which is just a brand of firewall. They all do the same thing, just different whistles and bells. Sonic Wall released an update a couple of months ago because the firmware that they were using was identified as having an exploit. So basically, there was they released a firmware to fix something that hackers could use to access environments. We patched all our customers' firewalls in a day when that came out. Who's patching your devices? You need to ask your IT because that is so incredibly important. Look at your supply chain. What's their attitude like to cybersecurity? My little story here is we put EDR and antivirus on one of our clients' environments one day, and the next hour or so it went nuts. Hundreds of alerts came up, and it came up because the software that they were using wasn't secure. It was unreliable. It was behind the hood and under the hood. It was all open source and exploits available, all of it, which basically meant that if someone knew what they were doing, they could hack their environment pretty easy. So I phoned up the software vendor on our customer's behalf, and I was like, look, here's all the evidence. Can you go away and patch it? They turned around and said, no, we're not interested. We don't think it's a problem. A couple of months later, that customer moved their entire system away from that software vendor to another one because the impact and risk that was involved. They made that decision, and it wasn't one they made lightly. But talk to your suppliers. What certifications have they got? What's their attitude? Stuff like that. Look at staff training. I've already mentioned how phishing is incredibly prevalent in terms of causing attacks. Are you enabling your staff to understand what's a good email and what's a bad email? If they see a bad email, what are they going to do about it? Make sure you're enabling your people, giving them the tools that they need. And lastly, shadow IT. This is something that's becoming a lot more important these days. Shadow IT basically means IT that's being introduced across an environment which doesn't have any IT department oversight. So if people are using AI-based systems, should they be using it? Is it secure? What information are they putting into it? Is it controlled? We've got customers who, they love to use Google Chrome. Google Chrome's a web browser, and loads of people love it because it's Google and it's not Microsoft, whatever. There's nothing inherently wrong with using Google Chrome, but Google Chrome is horrendous. Every week they produce updates to patch critical vulnerabilities associated with that bit of software. Our customers use Google Chrome if they want to, and we've got an automated way of patching that to make sure that that patch is pushed whenever whenever Google release a update. Do you guys have anything like that? These are things to ask your IT company, and it's more important than ever. My second takeaway is do a readiness check. So the first slide is about speak to your IT department, and they will hopefully be able to tell you what they know. It's the known problems, the known area. This is about sorting out a blind spot. So if any of you guys know what Fahari window is, so this is about closing the blind spot. This is about getting running a penetration test. Back in the day, penetration tests, whether internal or external, could cost 20 grand upwards just for one test. Nowadays, they're hugely cheaper. AI has come along and made these things a lot more effective, a lot more cost effective, and you can get CREST certified penetration tests, which you can run. Your IT team will probably need to be involved, but get it run, give the results to them, and they will be able to go away and understand what they need to do to patch it and make your environment safe. On top of that, think about your disaster recovery plan. If the worst happens, what does it really mean? And what I mean by that is, I think most of you, I suspect, have a disaster recovery plan, but sometimes I feel it can be an exercise in ticking a box. If you've got a DR plan and it doesn't have to relate to cybersecurity. If you've got a server in a building and the building burns down and your server's a pile of ash over here, you might phone up your backup provider and say, look, our server's down. Have you got our backups? And they'll say, yeah, we got your backups. That's fine. It's all okay. Where's the server you want us to put it on? And it's a pile of ash. So what does that actually mean? How are you going to? You're going to have to go and buy a brand new server, get it configured, put all that on it. How long is that going to take? What's it going to cost? Think about these things from a DR perspective. And lastly on this is, I think it's a really powerful tool to do a tabletop exercise. What that means is you get all the senior people in the organization, and they need to be senior stakeholders, whether you call it the board, the exec, whatever. Get them around the table and talk about what you would do and how you would react in an event that something awful happens. Who would you call? If you did have a ransomware attack and everything was affected, and IT and systems, it's all about mitigating the risk, but it could happen. If that happens, what are you going to do? Who are you going to tell? What are you going to tell your staff? Are you going to tell your staff? Because their bank details, their passport details maybe, that will all be available on the dark web unless you do something. What are you going to tell the press? Who's going to talk about it? It gets you thinking about what-if situations and allows you to plan for the worst, and hopefully you'll never have to do it, but it gets you thinking about a mindset. And it's a really powerful tool. We've done this. We work with the UK Cybersecurity Council. We've done round-top exercises with them, and it gets them thinking in a different way about how they work. We're not trying to sell them anything when we do it. It's about that partnership. And for me, the last takeaway is think about certifications. I was on a podcast earlier with, I think it's Regular, someone like that, and they do Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus in terms of they're the marking body that do it. And he was very passionate about it, and I agree. Cyber Essentials it's pretty hard to get, but it's supposed to be the baseline minimum standard that UK businesses should be working towards. There's no difference between Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus in terms of the controls. The big difference is how it's marked. Cyber Essentials is, and we kind of disagreed on this podcast, but in my opinion, it is pretty much self-certified. You get an IT bod to fill in a few boxes, they look at it and go, oh yeah, that looks right, or whatever. But no one kind of checks the homework. Cyber Essentials Plus is when you get an auditor involved, and they actually go through and make sure that what you're saying is correct. Cyber Assurance is the next standard up, and ISO 27001, again, that's the next standard up. And we use it at Nexus. We're certified in CE Plus and then 20001, and it's really hard to maintain, but it's got good, we get it because it's important to keep our customers secure. We're custodians of their environments and their data in a lot of instances. But you can use this for things like getting better cyber insurance costs. For you might need it to win business as an organisation. All of this is important, and again, it's something that you can work towards as a roadmap, but also ask your suppliers about where they are as well. So anyway, I went on for 25 minutes. We've got 5 minutes left for questions. I know it's quick, and I'm sorry. Anyone got any questions that I can help with?
If you were going to suggest one thing I just go right now back to them off listening to, or for your top one thing?
The quick takeaway is speak to your IT provider. Every business is different, and they've all got different needs, requirements. Everyone's had their own journey. We bring customers onto Nexus all the time, and we look under the hood and we're like, oh my goodness me, why is it set up like that? And why, it's a bit of a mess over here. But we don't know the backstory of why it's got to that thing. And it's not about blaming someone for making what we might consider poor decisions, but there's always a story about it. But speak to your IT department. And if you don't have that relationship with them, speak to a company that you can build that relationship with and work with. Because ultimately, it's your business. Genuinely, people are trying to extort things from you. They don't target Marks and Spencers. They fire everything out and see who bites. It's kind of like fishing. That's what they do. And you need to protect yourselves from that. Hello.
Obviously reminds we have a good relationship with our IT company. It's a Swift family business. And sometimes if she asks you something, they just go, oh yeah, it's this by, it's all, because they know that I'm not going to understand the tech behind it. Are there any sort of fail-safe? You give us guidelines there what to ask, but is there anything we can be doing ourselves to test these and check?
Yeah, I think, there's two.
It's not like we don't trust them.
No, it's not about trust, is it? But I think there's two parts to that. If you feel that they aren't answering a question in a way that you understand, then I think that's part of their job to talk to you in a way that is works and provide a roadmap to you to say, look, IT always needs investment. And whatever you do, you need to upgrade your systems, you need to buy new laptops because of Windows 10 to Windows 11. But you should have a 5-year roadmap from them to say, right, this is the investment and this is what you need and all the rest of it. And I think, just think about what is asked. I guess I said before, if you went to France, would you be able to log in without contacting them? Well, yes or no, maybe not. But also, if everything's okay, then go for Cyber Essentials. Start working, that's the bare minimum. Go to them and say, right, we want Cyber Essentials. We know we need it. It will help mitigate the risk of attack. Where are we with it? Now, if they turn around and say, well, you're pretty much there, let's go for it, then that's brilliant. You can put that, you've got that reassurance that what they've been saying to you is right. If they turn around and say anything other than that, they might say, oh, you don't need it. I'd really worry about that. If they turn around and said, well, it'll cost a fortune, well, you need to dig into that to understand why that is, because it might be that it costs a fortune because you need a load of work done, or it means you may need new systems. But again, why isn't that on the roadmap already, and why are you prompting for that? And I'm not trying to tarnish any relationship, but that's how I would deal with it. I'm quite bad in my role at managing suppliers. I ask difficult questions, but that's part of my job. But you ultimately, you've got a good relationship, but you pay them. You pay them for that service, and you pay them for expertise. You're not asking anything unreasonable. Does that help?
Yeah, a lot, yeah. Is there a cost involved in Cyber Essentials, just getting, let's say, if everything that you're doing?
Yep, there is a cost. It depends on the organisation. So there's people upstairs who can talk about how much it will cost, but their cost is typically about marking the certification, doing the work to get you certified. It's like going to a garage. A garage will take your car to the garage and they'll do the work and issue you an MOT. It's a little bit different with IT because you don't want the same person to be marking their own homework. So you speak to your company, they'll get you up to that level, and then it'll be marked by somebody else. And it can be we've worked with organisations with thousands of users, and it's a nightmare at times. We're trying to bring them together and make sure everything's okay, but you've got to get through it, and you do get through it. Anyone else? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. I hope it was useful. Come upstairs for a chat if you want anything. We obviously, if you haven't been through this already, then, win a hamper if you come and talk to us. But really, I think the important thing is there to, we can do a cyber risk review if you want, and, help with you, and maybe give you a bit of reassurance, or maybe something to worry about, I don't know. But let's see what happens.